You can kind of linger with a song for a long time because it's really hard to like let go of something that you're working hard on and maybe you think it's not perfect yet. And I think that is a trap that I've fallen into. I had a plan. I was gonna play like High and Dry by Radiohead and I panicked and I was like, no, like I can't remember the words. I can't remember the chords. I'm just gonna play this song. It can be really expensive sometimes. Like I went on a tour last year and I had the best time. But when I came back, my credit score, I was like, man, I never thought I'd worry about this.
It's a funny industry and a funny thing because it's like, I feel like a lot of people are like, okay, if you want to do this, you go to New York or LA. And then you look at a list of like most expensive places to live and it's like
I
New
know.
York and LA.
It's like,
And,
cool.
and
So
cool. So I'm doing this thing that may not make me a lot of money, but I need a lot of money to go where I do that.
so much of our lives exist in the digital. That can be really cool in the ways that we're connected. But there's something really special also about like, if you go to a show and you buy a record, you're forever attached to that show, by that record, and to that artist in a greater degree of connection. And I think also like having a physical thing will remind you to be more conscientious with your intake as well.
Hey, if you're like me and you're interested in the YouTube or creator space, you should check out The Published Press. The Published Press is a completely free newsletter founded by YouTubers Colin and Samir. They host their own podcast talking to some of YouTube's largest creators. They've edited some of the best content I've seen on YouTube, and now they're sharing their knowledge about the YouTube space with you for free. The Published Press comes out 3 times a week, every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, with everything going on with your favorite creators and platforms. And like I said, it's completely free. Just enter your email address to receive the Published Press whenever it comes out, and that's it. So what are you waiting for? Click the link in the description below, sign up to the Published Press, and get all the info you need on the industry.
She's an indie pop artist based in New York City. Her music has garnered acclaim from the New York Times and Pitchfork, and her new album, Shapeshifting, is coming out April 26th. Please welcome Nisa to the podcast. How are you doing today?
Hey, I'm doing well. We're having a sunshiny day in Brooklyn after a couple of days of rain, so I can't complain. How are you
Yeah,
doing?
nice. Nice. Well, hopefully after this you can go out and, enjoy some of the sunshine.
The temporary sunshine, I should say.
Yeah, yeah. You gotta make the most when you get it. And
Exactly.
so when you were like growing up, what was your first experience with music like, or what sort of like sparked a passion for music in you?
So when I was like 7 or 8, my family and I moved to Manhattan and we moved into a building on the Upper West Side. And my dad was he was like the super in the building, so he would do repairs for people and like kind of building maintenance. And I remember one time he brought me upstairs to this man Rob's house who had like a room full of guitars. And I think he saw that I thought it was really cool. So he offered to give me his Stratocaster, one of his Stratocasters, for an evening to play with. And he told me to look up the song Smoke on the Water. And then it was like my first homework assignment. And I came back and I played like the main lick. And he was like, that's awesome. If you ever want a lesson, like I'm here. And so I started taking like a couple of lessons with him. It was really casual. It was like we'd look up like an Eagles song. Like Hotel California was the first song I memorized all the lyrics to. And he was just awesome and like was so chill and supportive. And that was kind of my only like lesson plan I had was just like every once in a while. And then a few years went by and in high school I remembered how much I loved playing guitar and I picked one up again and kind of played with friends. And yeah, that was kind of where I started.
Yeah, awesome. And so from, picking up that first Stratocaster, playing with friends, when does it go from like a fun thing that you enjoy and you like to do to like considering trying to pursue it or like release your own original music?
It wasn't until like really late in college. I had gone abroad my junior year and I went to London and it was the first time I really lived anywhere except New York. And I was in this really exciting city that had a like bustling music scene and just so many shows happening all the time. And I had been playing in a friend's rock collective, so he had like his own music and covers and stuff, and I was playing guitar with background vocals in his band. And I had never really written for myself, and I had songs that I had written but like abandoned. So when I went abroad, I kind of started writing again and going to shows and got excited about the idea of having my own project. It wasn't until I came back that I started writing and recording for a project, and that was my first EP, Guilt Trip. And I just kind of started there and kept going and had like a really enjoyable time learning about production in that time because I hadn't produced anything or even recorded music outside of on my Logic, like my GarageBand interface
Yeah.
actually. Um, so yeah, I made Guilt Trip with Ronnie. Producer name is Torna, and he plays in my live and produces so much of my music, including the record Shapeshifting. And yeah, so we just kept working together, and like I would basically go from my apartment to the studio every day for like an entire summer and just collect demos and songs and see
Yeah.
what fit where.
Yeah, awesome. And as you're trying to do that, how like supportive are your parents in that journey with like trying to balance that while, you know, finding something that maybe you have more experience in or could like get a job immediately?
Totally. Well, I think they had an idea when I studied English in school that I wasn't gonna be a doctor or a lawyer, which I think like being first generation, like my parents had an expectation that, you know, they came here to have an easier existence, and I
Yeah.
was kind of like
And
insinuating that my
you were
path
like
was
and you were picking the hard right route. You
exactly,
wanted to be a music artist, which
exactly.
is
But I'm the
like
younger
not
sibling.
not like a guaranteed career.
Totally. So I think they're very supportive and they still are, but there's always that like that peril of like, oh no, well, what if you need to, you know, you need to make a
Like
living?
having a plan B, having a
Exactly.
backup.
So
Yeah.
there was always that, and I think that that was just instilled in me, and it always created a sense of like urgency, which I think I still it exists in me. This like urgency and anxiety that I think can be really helpful creatively, but also like you know, you have to force yourself to slow down in so many ways and realize that like art takes time and you know, life also moves in different ways. So you don't always have a linear path.
Yeah.
But yeah, I definitely felt like a pressure.
Yeah, definitely. And so maybe it is having some sort of plan B or something like that. But if there's someone else who's like wanting to start trying to release stuff or is like just now thinking of like getting studio time and things like that, what tips or advice would you give to them?
I would say if you're planning on releasing something and you've been thinking about it for a while, the hardest thing is to decide that something is finished. In my experience, like you can kind of linger with a project or a song for a long time because it's really hard to like let go of something that you're working hard on and maybe you think it's not perfect yet. And I think that is a trap that I've fallen into where I've taken a really long time to make something and then I'll go back and I'll realize that the early demo I made that took me a day was better or like felt more true to what I was trying to do. Because the more you can kind of like go back and edit something, you know, the further you get from where you began and kind of what your intention was. So I'd say like trust yourself is definitely a big thing. Because your instincts are often, you know, there for a reason.
Yeah, yeah, totally. And I'm sure like you said, growing up in New York City, you got a lot of experience like open mics, like just like gigs here and there. So what was your first live show like or what or just that general time of like starting to perform?
I remember the first time I performed live, I was 17 and I took myself to an open mic that started at midnight. And I don't remember what the excuse was that I told my parents, but I was definitely like in that phase of life where I would often like give an excuse and then
Yeah.
immediately realize I deal with the consequences of it later, which I think is a lot easier to do in the suburbs. Like it's definitely scarier to have your child like be like peace at midnight, but I think they had an inkling that it was music related. And I remember I went to Sidewalk Cafe, which no longer exists. And I played You Know I'm No Good by Amy Winehouse. And it was like one of those songs that I had learned also when I was really young. So I had a plan. I was gonna play like High and Dry by Radiohead, and I panicked and I was like, no, like I can't remember the words, I can't remember the chords. I'm just gonna play this song. And I ended up meeting a lot of people who I played music with for the coming years at that same open mic. So it was a pretty like significant
Awesome.
and fun
Yeah,
thing.
it had an impact on like where you were going or what was
Totally.
to come next for you. And we're talking a lot about it being sometimes like a hard journey for artists to like start releasing, try to get their name out there and things like that. Has there ever been a moment that sort of made you like second guess or question whether you should keep pursuing music or like take a break, anything like that?
I think it can be hard to starting out with, and I think this is true of many people, and like there's so many levels to everything that I don't know that it even matters to me anymore. But I think when I was first starting out, I was told by a lot of people that it was really hard to like break through in any feasible way and like to really like gain an audience or people, listening to your project. And I was always just like, well, I'm doing this for me. So this is what I love. But I think at a certain point I developed some more consciousness about being perceived and, how much of that was happening. And like I think living in New York too, like you're surrounded by so many amazing and talented friends who are so supportive. And you're also surrounded by like people who just like blow up overnight. And I think at times I've definitely had like the second guessing, and I think it was always related to more so like, well, if this doesn't work out for me necessarily, it's not like there's nothing else I could do. Like I love writing, and I went to college to write, and I think I could always like use this as my backup plan. But what always stopped me is the understanding that like success is not defined by numbers and metrics that, at least
Yeah.
personally. And I think that kind of gave me like a second wave of confidence that like honestly it really does matter if you care about something so much that you can just always keep making it and not
Yeah.
always worry about, how people are perceiving you.
And it's also a lot of artists have different definitions of like making it or success or something.
Yes.
And like I'm going to college for music and things like that. And just earlier this week we had like a guest lecturer come in who's like working in the music industry and everything. And she
Cool.
was like, there's two definitions of success in music. One is, you're a big artist, you're headlining festivals, blah blah blah, like people
Yeah.
listen to you. The other is I like have a place to live, I can get groceries, and that is
Yes.
all the money from music and nothing else. Like I don't need a side job or anything.
Yeah.
And it's like I feel like a lot of people aren't looking for or aren't like needing that like huge global success. They're just like, hey, this is what I want to do like as a living, which is
Absolutely. Yeah.
totally fine. And I'm very like doable if you're doing it right.
Yeah, I really love that reminder because I think like it is hard. I mean, I guess another piece of the second guessing is just like can be really expensive sometimes. Like I went on a tour last year and I had the best time, but when I came back, my credit score, I was like, man, I never thought I'd worry about this, but it's one of those things like I'm learning a lot and I'm kind of new to this industry, and I think like um it's about these like tricks about I might not ever make a whole living on it, but being able to kind of get by is a real thing too, like knowing where to
Yeah.
find balance and like it's so easy to say yes to everything, but sometimes moderation in life. And I think I live in a really expensive city too, so I try to really like
Yeah.
treat myself to shows and stuff like that, and also remember that like cool, like there are free things that I could be doing, and like writing music and stuff like that is brings me a lot of joy, and that's also so
Yeah,
it's
no, it's
very
a funny industry and a funny thing because it's like I feel like a lot of people are like, okay, if you want to do this, you go to New York or LA, and then you look
yeah.
at a list of like most expensive places to live, and it's like
I
New
know,
York and LA.
I know, it's like cool,
It's
so
cool. So I'm doing this thing that may not make me a lot of money, but I need a lot of money to go where I do that.
Hey, it's Heroek, and this episode is sponsored by me. Well, kind of. If you don't know, I recently started a clothing line called Quest Clothing, which you can shop right now. I'll leave some pictures here on the screen, but we got the Core collection, which is just this sleek black and white design on a bunch of products. And then we also have some more like merch style stuff with cover arts for my songs and things like that. I've been wanting to do this for a long time, and I'm really excited that I now have it. And so expect a lot more collections, a lot more designs coming out soon. I'll leave a link to it down below, and if you want to stay up to date with any new releases or anything like that, follow at ShopQuestClothing on Instagram. So go get cool designs like this, or even this, and you'll be helping me support all of this, the podcast, the music, everything. Plus, it just looks cool. We even got this nice big letter design on the back. Look at that. Look how cool that looks. So head to the link in the description to get yourself some Quest clothing, and make sure to follow at ShopQuestClothing on Instagram for updates with new collections and stuff like that. And now back to the episode.
It's pretty ironic, and like I found this to be a funny thing too, where like I guess the presence of like studios is also kind of disappearing as like people try to save on those costs. Like even living in a city like New York or LA, like the studios here are more expensive too. So a lot of people have home setups, and I'm
Yeah,
like
because
been
it's easier to
fascinated.
like make the purchase
Yeah,
for the gear you need, and it's like a one-time thing, and I have it indefinitely versus like every
exactly.
time I need to record,
Yeah,
paying
like
as much as it would cost for just for the
absolutely.
gear.
Yeah. And I've definitely like hacked producing things on my own, and like there is a song, this was just more out of like me trying to make something fun and different, but my song Affection, there's like the opening 10 seconds is this like spaceship sound, but really it was my air conditioner through like 4 phasers. And I sent it to Nate, who was producing the project. And he was like, "That's so cool. We're gonna use that." And I was like, "Awesome." I'm not even gonna tell you what I did because it's so embarrassing.
Yeah, no, but it's really cool, and it's like especially things like that is part of what got me into the production side of music, of just like I can take random sounds from everywhere, and it's like,
Yeah.
okay, all of a sudden if I do this and that, now it sounds like music or something I could use in a song.
Yeah,
And
it's so
so
fun.
yeah. So when you are like trying to write a song or make some new music, what does that process look like? Do you have a process at all, or is it more just like whatever happens, happens?
I think there's kind of like I thought about this a while ago because I was like trying to write a song one day, and I realized that like it kind of takes me a couple of days to like fall into a pattern with songwriting usually. There's almost this like getting warmed up aspect to it of like it used to be ritual for me to write every day, and I still do, but I don't always write songs. And what I've realized is like the thing that works best for me and kind of makes me feel excited about songwriting again is like getting into that headspace and then putting myself in a place, like a physical location that feels like it's gonna like kind of allow me to get to a really creative place, or like a really different place from my last song that I wrote. And
Yeah.
I definitely have written so many songs in my room over the years, and I've seen patterns with the way that I write when that's happening and like what I write about. And so over the last few years I've tried to kind of use like movement and different geographical spaces as like places of inspiration, and like um whenever I travel, I try to like bring my setup. I have a really funny story about how shapeshifting started. A couple years ago, I was on a trip to Florida with my mom, as one does, and it was like just us two. And she's the best, and but she like loves to sit on the beach, and I'm anxious, and I can only sit on the beach for like a couple hours at a time before I'm like, all right, well, what's my purpose in life?
Yeah.
So so I went back to this hotel, like really funny Art Deco building, and I wrote Currents, and I was like learning Logic at the same time. And so it was really fun for me to just kind of like sit there for a couple hours a day. And so I wrote the first 2 songs there, Currents and Pressure Principle. And yeah, that just felt like a breaking point for me in terms of like writing that album and opening up that world. And I found that that's been like a pattern.
Yeah, awesome. I totally get what you mean with like the anxiousness. It's like I do like to relax and like do things for fun, but I'm also someone who like loves being productive and like
Yes.
always feels like oh it's honestly a negative at times, but like I'll be doing something and I'm like, okay, how can this be productive for things like that?
I know.
And it's like sort of like you said, all like friends will ask me to go to the beach and I'm there for like 2 hours or something, and I'm like, not even because I have something scheduled or anything. I'm just like, yeah, I'm gonna go back to my room and try to produce something, or like
Yeah,
ask people to come on here and do a podcast. It's like just needing like I feel like I always need something to be like in the works or be working on something.
absolutely.
Um,
There's something very musical about always needing to be producing. It's like this joke that my friend Zach came up with um about Ronnie, who produces a lot of my music with me. He was like Ronnie was like trying to like give instructions for cooking something, and Zach was like, this guy is always producing because he can't get out of the producer mindset, like no matter
yeah.
what activity is. And I think that's true of a lot of us where we just want to always be kind of making something a project, and it's fun. It's like
And
it
yeah.
yeah.
And there are times where like especially for producers or the production side of things, it's like you can see it in other things of life or even like
Exactly.
while trying to make music. Like I was listening to a podcast with Logic, the rapper. I don't know if you
Oh
listen
yeah,
to him, but he
I
was
do.
talking about like the early days of like when he was trying to make music, and he'd be like in there with his producer and they'd be like working on something, and he'd be listening and he'd be like, no, put like this here, change up the drums like this. And his friend just like stopped and looked at him and he goes, I think you're a producer. And I was like, what do you
Yeah.
mean? No, I'm a rapper. And he's like, no, you have like something in your head that
Producer
you want to
mentality.
create. That's what a
Yeah,
producer does. And it's like,
exactly.
oh yeah, I guess I am a producer. And like that's what started him to like try to produce his own stuff.
I love
Um,
that story. Yeah,
yeah,
that's such a funny way too. It's like I realize that when I'm like I make a joke also with like it comes with producing, but I think also just the way that my brain works and with like the way that I see things. Like I'm always like slightly adjusting something, tinkering a little bit, like,
yeah.
oh, this could be this, or what if we change this? And there's this like indecisiveness that just comes from like wanting to see all the possibilities and
Oh yeah.
realizing like sometimes you have to decide, and that's like a big hump for me is that like choosing. And you get to build a world when you write a record or when you write a song or when you produce something, but you have to set the boundaries, right? So it's like it goes both ways with music, and I think that's really fun too.
Yeah, definitely. And with your music in general, is there like any artists or bands that you have as like big inspirations to you? And if you do, how do you like balance that with still putting your own like unique style on something?
Totally. I'm really inspired by a lot of different sounds, which I think is a good thing because then I kind of can play around with genre in a way that I think is like kind of a cop out. Like I don't like to say it's indie rock or it's indie pop. I like to say it's like a mix, but
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of like Kate Bush and just like in general the 80s Britpop scene, and I think that that influences like this color palette of a lot of my music. But then again, I love like pop music and I like elements of pop. And whether it's like Bjork's sensibilities of pop or like Holly Humberstone or something, I find a lot of inspiration in just kind of like listening to more so like the like if a really sweet Bjork record like makes sense for as an inspiration to a song. And like Kate Bush, like Cloud Busting, like always will be a reference for me. I think like it's with balance, it was harder for me in the beginning because I would when I first started writing, I would listen to something and I'd be like, cool, I want this to sound like the Pixies. And now I realize that like it's okay to pull from like a song that made you inspired enough to like want to kind of create that world, and still have your own sound. So now I'm more grounded in like understanding what I want things to sound like versus like, wanting to sound like this person.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome.
Are you a music artist trying to find a way to get your music on as many streaming platforms as possible? Then check out DistroKid. DistroKid is a super user-friendly and super easy-to-use service that will make your music available in stores like Spotify, Apple Music, iTunes, Amazon Music, YouTube, Snapchat, everything. Everything you could imagine, it's available. People will even be able to add your songs into their Instagram stories. DistroKid helps you with the distribution, monetization, and promotion of all of your music. Use the link in the description of this video for 7% off any DistroKid package you want. Pick from musician packages designed to help artists get their own music out there, or even get a label package where you can manage up to 100 artists from one profile. So that's more for like managers, labels, and you can also get the musician package that I mentioned earlier, which is more for artists, producers, things like that. It's super easy, and you can get 7% off any package right now with the link in the description of this video. So once again, if you're looking for a way to get your music on as many streaming platforms as possible, I'm talking any platform you can think of, get DistroKid and get 7% off right now with the link in the description. Back to the program.
For like people interested, on your website, on your store, there's like a limited edition cassette that you have that people can get. What do you think? Because like whether it's cassettes, CDs, vinyl, like tangible versions of music or like physical copies have been around so long and like almost are like increasing in popularity now. Like what do you think makes like physical music so special?
I personally love collecting and like the memories attached to physical music, and also just like I think like in a world where so much of our lives exist in the digital, and that can be really cool in the ways that we're connected, like me and you talking right now. It's like awesome that we
Yeah.
can do this, and like meet. But there's something really special also about like, if you go to a show and you buy a record, you're forever attached to that show, buy that record, and to that artist in a greater degree of like connection. And I think also like that having a physical thing will remind you to listen more and like be more conscientious with your intake as well, which I think like I love being able to listen to every song ever on my phone, but also like I like being careful and like considering what I want to listen to at a given time, and like curating a record collection, like things that matter to you, and that will last, for ostensibly like your record or your cassette could be with you for the rest of your life. And if it's taken care of properly. And I think that with your phone, like every time you get a new phone, like you might forget about your collection of songs, and like less so with like Spotify and Apple Music now, but
Yeah.
definitely really into the idea of physical things. And like from the artist perspective, for me, um, I really love putting thought into the design of like a vinyl, and like I have a CD booklet that I created with my friends for my Time to Plant Tears EP that's still like our favorite thing that we've done together. And so it's very emotional as well. And I think like that sentimentality is like it's important to have that from your own perspective as well with your work.
Yeah, totally, totally. And with whether it was something released physically or not, just any song of yours, is there one that sort of defied your expectations after release, like either blew up beyond what you thought it would, or like you were confident in but didn't do as well?
I think like, sorry, can you repeat the last part?
Yeah, just any song of yours that sort of defied expectations. Like you had some idea of how well it would perform and it did better or worse.
I think the first song that I put out from Guilt Trip was a really fun example of like definitely didn't think it would perform or like reach people. But because it was just a song I wrote after a breakup when I was like younger and like feeling very vulnerable about it, and like wrote it as more of like a gimmick toward myself, like joking, and like at that point, like, almost like how do I write a really punky garage song about this? How do I turn this into like a really fun live song that is also just like simple but like effective. And I got an email from this TV show like music supervisor, and it was like I had never made any money off of music, and she
Yeah.
offered to put, yeah, like you know what I mean? It was like I was like 19, and she was like, "Well, I think this song could do really well on this TV show younger." And I looked it up and I was like, "Uh, yeah, that sounds good to me." Like emailing as if
Yeah,
it was my
you're trying
manager.
to act like you've been there before. You're like,
I
yeah,
was,
yeah, I
yeah,
suppose we could do that.
actually, I think we could figure that out. Yeah. So that was
I'll
really
have my
cool.
people talk to your people.
Exactly. Like me like forwarding the email to my mom, like, okay, can you pretend to be, change your
Yeah,
last name.
make a new Google account, just Nisa's
Exactly.
manager.
We've all been there. It's just like Nisa's manager, but it's still her name, and like a
Yeah,
mom is a
and
manager in many ways of life.
yeah, momager.
Momager, exactly.
And so now recently you've been like releasing songs from this upcoming album, Shapeshifting. What like and all a lot of the songs have been great. They're awesome. I love listening to them. But what can we expect from the songs that haven't come out yet or that will come out with the full album?
Thank you. I'm really excited to share it. I have one more single coming out on Monday that's really fun. It's like the poppiest of all the pop songs on the record, and it's really fun and like more of a, I think, like a bop in terms of like the way it was crafted. Like we kind of were listening to Robin and having fun. And I think there's a couple more surprises. Like as I was saying earlier about genre, I think this record was more a concept album than I'd ever done, in terms of like production and stuff like that. So I'm really excited because I think all the songs that haven't come out yet actually have an individual flavor to them that like maybe people will connect to, if they hadn't connected to anything on the record yet. And I think also having it all out next Friday is crazy to me because I think like I haven't listened to it all the way through in a couple months since I first got the vinyl pressing, and I can't wait just to like experience it with everyone. Um,
Yeah,
I'm gonna shout out that I'm doing a Bandcamp listening party on Thursday. If anyone is around, I'm really excited about that on
awesome.
April
Yeah.
20th,
Well, so yeah, I'm planning for this to go out on Wednesday, whatever that date is, the
the
25th,
24th.
24th. But
Awesome.
this will be on Wednesday. So the new single, go listen. And if you want to join Nisa tomorrow for a listening party, I'll leave a link to that in the description as well. Check it out because the
Amazing.
album's coming soon. Um,
So exciting.
and what is if you had to pick, which maybe like you said, it being a concept album is a bit hard, but if there's an overall message to shape shifting, what would you say that is?
I think the overall message is that change is an ongoing process and you should never hold yourself to a timeline. And I think that in that same vein, be proud of yourself in every step of the way, in becoming, because that's a really hard thing. And like being alive is, beautiful and wonderful, but it also forces you to confront, the way that you interact in the world and, hard feelings. And so this record is about my journey, in self-discovery. And I think it would just make me happy to hear that anyone else connected in that way. And yeah, I'm still changing every day. So I realized that when writing this record that like there's no pressure or timeline.
Yeah, awesome. And if you going forward with music, like if you got this chance to sort of just make a song with any artist or band in the world, who would you want to collaborate with?
Ooh, who would I collaborate with if I could collaborate with anyone? I would collaborate with FKA Twigs or just Twigs because I think that she prefers that. I think her music is so cool and I love her and I would love to work with her.
Yeah, awesome. And in a similar vein, like as artists, do you have like a bucket list of venues that you would want to play your music at?
I want to play Red Rocks because I think it just seems like one of the coolest venues, like places to hear music, let alone
Yeah.
perform. And
Well,
a friend,
because yeah, it's like it's already you're getting a show with like the concert and
yeah.
whatnot, and then just like the backdrop of the mountains is awesome.
Yeah, and I love Colorado. I only went to Denver once and I had the best time. I got altitude sickness, which
Yeah,
like was worried about, and I was like, I'm not gonna get that. And then I had it. So I like would love to go back and redeem my experience, but I also really love the idea of playing outside. So the Greek is another big one that's also outdoors. I would
yeah.
love to play the Greek. Um, I've played Bowery Ballroom and that was a big one for me because I grew up going to shows there, but I would love to play Webster Hall in New York.
Awesome. Yeah. Yeah, no, the altitudes thing that's definitely gets you. It's the kind of thing where like
Girl.
I'm from a big like skiing family. Like once a year we always go on a big like family ski trip. And you know,
Yeah,
with that altitude, it's like it like a year's just long enough for you to forget. You're like, I'll be
I'll
fine.
be
Like a
fine.
cup of water at breakfast or something. And like sure enough, a day or two in, you're just like not again, you're not doing well.
Oh man, yeah, it's like it's so funny. Because I guess like you don't feel it immediately when you land, and then the minute your body's like you're really high right now, you are so high up, you start to like settle in, and then by the time you feel okay, it's time to leave. So it's not even worth like, you know, doing anything about
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. And like I guess starting to wrap things up here after, I mean, you have an album coming out, which is a huge project already, but down the line beyond that, what like do you have any plans for other music or just what's coming up for you in general?
So I do have plans for more music. I first have a tour coming in May. It's starting in New York and it ends in Philly, so it's a small East Coast tour. We're doing New York on May 7th, Washington, D.C. May 8th, and then Boston on the 11th, and we end in Philly on the 12th. So I'm doing that 4-date run for the album release shows in May, and then, recording more music after that. So
Yeah.
excited to be writing and recording again. So probably expect more music later this year, honestly.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I'm excited for it. I'm excited for Shapeshifting coming out on Friday and everything up until then. So thank you so much for coming on and having this chat. Anything you want to shout out or promote, feel free to do it now.
Thank you so much. I just will shout out the record again. April 26th, Shapeshifting, my debut album will be out everywhere. I'm selling hot pink magenta really vinyl for it, and I'll be
Awesome.
selling merch and going on tour. So if you just want to listen to it, it'll be out everywhere online as well. Thank you so much for having me. I had so much fun.